am really honored to be with you today to speak on how we advance accountability using business architecture at Rowe Price. I will start today in terms of our agenda, by providing you with a little bit of background about myself and then also our firm. And I will cover our business architecture story. So how did we get started in business architecture as a team? And then spend the majority of our time on how we advance accountability. And obviously close out with your questions. So with that, as Alan stated, I serve as the Director of Business Process Optimization. I have been with Rowe Price for 16 years, where majority of the roles that I have focused on has been primarily in leading and driving change within our distribution operations side of the business. I currently serve as the leader of our architecture team and focus on capability scaling and efficiency across our global distribution. A little bit about our firm. So if you have not heard of Rowe Price, we are a global asset manager serving the needs of our clients. We have been in business and founded since 1937, so a little over 65 years. We are headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland, with offices in 17 countries around the world. We service clients and shareholders in over 53 countries and employ a little over 7,500 associates. So let's talk a little bit about my team. Currently, my team is called the Business Capability Modeling and Architecture Team. I will first start by just sharing that business architecture at Rowe Price was not a linear, well thought out business strategy to create a business architecture practice or team. We literally came an overnight strategic necessity. So business architecture was the necessity as our firm doubled in size and expanded to serve clients in over 53 countries in the last 4 years. We were established in Q4 of 2019 under the value proposition of really driving capability ownership. There was a strong desire from our leadership to create capabilities, a greater discipline, and more direct accountability for our business capabilities, which would enable us to more efficiently and effectively manage our growing complexity as a $1 trillion global distribution organization. Our mission as a team is to enable and accelerate global distribution's ability to deliver excellence at scale through capability planning and management disciplines and connecting strategy to execution with business capability models and blueprints. We spent quite a bit of time together in our first few months as a team, really building out our team. So in terms of relationships and really grounding on the core components. In addition to talking about and establishing our mission statement, we also established the operating principles that you see represented on this slide. These 9 principles really is set and establish our rules of the road, and they serve as our guide in helping us to make sound decisions, build trust, and enable greater innovation in the work that we deliver. So in terms of where does my team sit within our organization, we currently have a centralized team structure. We sit within our global distribution side of the business under a shared services group called Enablement and Operations. Global distribution is responsible for the distribution to and client service of our financial institutions, our intermediaries, financial advisors, individual investors, and retirement plan services globally. Over 50% of our associate base at Rowe Price sits within this side of the business. The head of our global distribution also serves as our sponsor for our work and has been a wonderful advocate for business architecture, which has been instrumental in our adoption and the success of our practice. I have an amazing team of 3. So combined, my team has over 30 years of asset management experience. All of my team has worked within the business throughout our careers at Rowe in various change leadership roles. We all have learning and application backgrounds in Lean Six Sigma, change management, and project management. A huge benefit that I have found of residing and sitting within the business is that my team and I, we all have deep expertise and how our global distribution business works. We've built many years of leading change in projects, and we've built those trusting relationships with our business partners, which has played an important role in the adoption and the advocacy of business architecture and the work that we deliver. One unique thing about my team that I will share is that when we came together, we did not have a business architecture background. But the one commonality that we all shared was that we know how to lead change. But now we had to learn to really leverage this discipline called business architecture to enable the change. So we rely heavily still to this day on studying and looking at industry guides such as the BizBoc, a really wonderful tool called BizArc Mastery, and various other learning resources. And we attend the wonderful annual Business Architecture Guild to really stay on top of industry best practices and standards and reference models for the financial services industry. So we coined the term of voracious learners because we are truly voracious learners in business architecture, and we are passionate about what we do and the value that this discipline brings to our organization. Let me start by setting the stage for the history of business architecture at Rowe Price. So this slide represents a brief roadmap of our journey. So during 2019 and the second half, I would say, of 2020, we focused on three primary key areas. The first was educating our global distribution leaders on what business architecture is and how we leverage it. Number two included identifying single points of accountability around our capabilities and establishing beliefs and behaviors around what does it really mean to be accountable and responsible for our business capabilities. Number three, we began leveraging a capability-based planning lens within our technology planning cycle. Towards the end of 2020, going into 2021, we really focused on building out our capability assessment frameworks. And we ran several pilot engagements within global distribution to test and learn, and to also ensure our leaders were learning and what we were doing was providing value to what they needed. And we also finalized our service offerings and our stakeholder model year. So we currently have a model year that really represents our stakeholder engagement plan. So how will we engage with our stakeholders on an annual basis through a suite of services to serve their needs using business architecture? Today, we continue to service our clients through service offerings and are viewed as trusted advisors and consultants. So I wanted to take a pause and really just give you a visual representation of our business capability model. Our model was built in 2015. We do have one enterprise model for our firm. It has 6 primary capability areas. The primary focus areas for our global distribution side of the business is really found in number 1, our distribution, marketing, and experience space. Number 3, our operations space. And also number 5, our business cross-cutting area. We do have a 3-level taxonomy that you see represented here. And prior to our team being established, we primarily used this within our technology business. So our model was being leveraged to really identify total cost of ownership and to tie those costs back to our business. What I have shared since we've been established as a team with our stakeholders, and we still talk about this, I often coin business architecture and the business capability model specifically as being the superpower. And that superpower is that it actually aligns us to a common language, and it's one mental model and how we see what we do as an organization. So the fact that we can all speak the same thing has been such a huge adoption point for our stakeholders. And then we've also talked about the power behind it of enabling strategic conversations. So let me spend some time talking about the first activity that our team performed outside of educating, was really begin to lay out our objectives and framework to establish accountability for our capabilities. We have 6 main business units that make up our global distribution organization. And the overall goal was to really create 6 business unit specific maps utilizing the firm's capability model and adding in key accountabilities and responsibilities. Our 4 objectives really consisted on identifying single points of accountability for the business unit capability, identifying who is responsible for planning and delivering those capabilities, so partners that are helping to mature the capability, and then gathering current state observations from our leaders. So what are the ownership gaps that they're seeing? What are the risks and imbalances that we may need to talk about and raise up? This work ultimately serves as a foundation for a number of our capability planning and management routines. So this accountability identification was really core to us running additional services and supporting our stakeholders across the suite of offerings that we have. We established 2 roles that you see here for our business capability model. And those 2 roles are called executive sponsor, so capability executive sponsor, and capability owners. On the left side of this slide, one of the things I will start by saying is that we do believe that a single point of accountability is required to manage the life cycle of a capability. And that role we coined as the capability executive sponsor. This was a mindset shift I will share for our leaders, because we came at capability ownership from an enduring perspective versus a program project where you have a start end date. Our principle that we established early on is that accountability must exist at the top of the house and had to be declared at the senior most leadership team. We spent many sessions with our 6 business units declaring those accountabilities. And as an executive sponsor, if I'm wearing that hat, I am responsible for understanding current and target state. I'm accountable for understanding the outcomes of the capability. What am I trying to drive to? What is the future vision that I want to paint and the picture that I want to paint for the organization for this capability? But I'm not working alone. I have a village of additional partnerships throughout the firm that are really helping to support the development of the business plans and maturing the capability. The right side of this slide represents the capability owners, who we coin as the responsible parties. We recognize that, of course, that village, again, it takes to really work together to execute against various capabilities. And we sort of coined this as an umbrella role. It can include functional managers, product owners, technical owners, or leads. And these individuals are really coined with working with the executive sponsor to help plan, execute, and govern and manage the capability. The benefits of this that we saw as we start to think about initiatives and strategies that are really cross-cutting. So the cross-cutting priorities is a term that we coined here, that really require us to look horizontally and assess impacts and architect solutions. What are the impacts of our strategy? And having that horizontal view, we now know who should have the seat at the table. There's no ambiguity around who needs to be involved with setting the foundation of capability ownership. What we have learned over time in our 2 years is that a maturity progression in the capability is actually evident in the relationships between the two parties that you see here. So do we have governance, stakeholder routines, and interactions for collective responsibility and accountability? And we do believe that over time, the relationship continues to progress from not just awareness, but it progresses to partnership. Where can we work together to mature the capability to full integration? This represents a summary of the mapping process that we took. So what you'll see to the left is the first step that we took as we started to talk to each of our BU segments was really just by pausing to ask the question, what capabilities are core to your business unit strategy? That was a different question that had never been asked before. And so Again, I point back to the alignment of common language now. And so that was a really insightful question. So we asked, what were the core capabilities that were important to your strategy? So what capabilities do you really own? So you have the majority of people and process that sit within your business unit. And then what capabilities do you influence? Meaning that majority of the resources and processes sit maybe within a shared service function, but you really rely on those key partners to really mature those capabilities. And so this produced a visual representation that was really eye-opening, almost of a mini operating model for our leaders. We declared executive sponsors as well as capability owners. And this, again, as the foundation, really helps us to activate and start to integrate capability-based planning into business routines and governance. The one key learning that I will share is that we operate in a highly matrix environment. So what we were able to see is that we, in most business units, we were actually rely on our partners 65 to 85% of the time to really bring that business capability into the business. So the matrix piece really came to light in this visual representation of sort of a mini operating model. In terms of the outcomes, so on the left-hand side, it's just a reflective of, when you're established, a new discipline within the firm, there's a lot of educating that we recognized that we had to do. And so although we had a great sponsor, great advocacy for it, trusted relationships that we built, still making sure the leaders understand what is business architecture, what is a capability, what is a business capability model. Those are really core to really enabling that awareness and adoption as you move forward. So you'll see there's a lot of one-on-ones, socialization meetings, a lot of leadership team presentations as well. On the right was really the value delivery and the ultimate outcome of this work. We had 6 BU specific BCM maps delivered, as well as identified our total count of executive sponsors and validated that as well with our capability owners. This is all a new way of thinking and speaking. So establishing accountability was just a new way of thinking for our organization and is a muscle that we're still continuing to mature in. In alignment with the 4th objective that I covered on the previous slide of really pausing a moment to really identify what are the accountability observations and the gaps from our leaders, what we heard right away was, what does it mean to be accountable? What should I do differently? What types of behaviors should I exhibit if I am a capability executive sponsor and I sit as the accountable party? What does it mean if I am a capability owner working with my capability executive sponsors? And so we took that feedback to our global distribution executive team, who spent several hours laying out beliefs and behaviors they felt were important to be reflected for each of these roles. So the blueprint that you see in front of you is something that we revisit regularly with our leaders and has started to be infused within performance objectives. So on the left side, as I think about a capability executive sponsor, what this really means is that you're owning the objectives and the outcomes. You have the ownership mindset, regardless of the reporting line or hierarchy. You're advocating and you're collaborating with stakeholders and capability owners. And you're not just collaborating, but you're building advocacy and coalitions across various groups and bringing others together. You're creating trust with discipline. You're encouraging people to share problems. You're responding to those problems and encouraging people to manage discipline and rigor and helping to support these structures, which really gets into the measurement. On the right side, capability owners, this is the deep expertise area. So these are the leaders that have deep expertise in a single dimension, such as data, compliance, or technology, or multiple dimensions. This is where the group really comes together and your expertise is valued. And you're even more valuable when you understand not only just the current state, but you understand it from not just from a vertical perspective, but from a horizontal perspective. And that horizontal awareness is specific in a dimension, or it could be across groups as well. These folks really thrive most when they have partnership models and true teamwork that exists between the executive sponsors and teams to not only just understand where we are, but where are we pointing to collectively? What is the one view we are trying to get to in terms of target state? And lastly, communicating. One of the questions we often ask our executive sponsors and capability owners is, how often are you in conversation? We've heard everything from having lunch every quarter to we have formal governance and we meet monthly. So one of the things we emphasize is none of this is possible without communication and relationships amongst the different groups. Of course, we ended with gathering feedback. That gathering feedback for us is really important. As I mentioned earlier, we all have a background in continuous improvement. So we are always asking the question, what can we do better? What did you learn? How can we make this a better experience? What are things that we can grow to continue to develop our business architecture practice? And so architecting empathy and active listening into our conversations to understand how we can best serve our clients' needs was really what we wanted to drive home to really close this out. So we asked our clients, what would be of most benefit to your business unit as you think about the next steps in using the business capability model? What you see here represents the voice of our clients. So there were 6 key themes that really came to the forefront. The first, again, no shocker, was around accountability reinforcement. How can we continue to talk about it? How can we continue to use the frameworks and really embed them into performance objectives and having a really great conversation around coming together and having that accountability around our business capabilities. We also heard, how can I objectively really assess from a maturity perspective, where am I current state in my capability in terms of maturity? I need to understand my current state so that I can build out, okay, where do I need to be in terms of future state for my capabilities? And then the third I call the powerhouse, which is honestly my favorite, is really integrated capability planning. So last year, we started to integrate capability-based planning into our annual business planning, and we're still maturing in that space. But this, to me, the power that this brings, the framework, the insights and analysis to the conversation to help our leaders make better decisions in our planning, I get so excited about that, and the value that's delivered with doing that. And then the next 2, process data, maturity, and ownership is in operating model, baselines and impact, are 2 specific areas we're still developing, and we look to target more so within the next year. And then lastly, we've started investment prioritization conversations. So how do I really use the business capability model as an objective mechanism for investment prioritization for foundational capabilities? And so are we investing essentially in core capabilities that are really important to our strategy? How do we show that alignment, that where we're spending our money is in alignment with the vision we're trying to go in terms of our strategy? That was really important to our stakeholders, and we've started work as a team within that space as well. So after listening to our stakeholders, that is when we came back and started to formalize our suite of services. And so what you see represented here is a direct outcome of listening and architecting empathy for our clients and listening to what they desire. So the first obviously is around the business capability model. So we have an annual process that we go through with our executive sponsors because we anticipate leaders, move throughout the organization. So revisiting those accountabilities and making sure we do have those names accurately is important. We have, in number 2, we've developed essentially an education program. Although we sit within global distribution, we adopt an enterprise-wide viewpoint. And so we have seen, although we've educated more so in our global distribution space, over the last year, our education services have really expanded outside of global distribution. So we've had services, really education services with our enterprise change office, our risk office, our HR office. And so that has to me been the most exciting part, because we've proven the value in global distribution, and now our stakeholders are starting to say, "Hey, Tanisha, what's going on over there?" And that's, just the highlight as a leader, to know that your team is really delivering something that leaders are excited about, and they see the value and they want a piece of the pie. So that's been really exciting for us. And then 3 and 4 are really around the strategic reviews. So what are the blueprints we need to build as a team to help our leaders make those better informed decisions as they move forward? So I'll share a few key learnings with you. So after 2 years of being resilient and committed to this work, because we truly believe in the value it brings, I would like to share 4 key learnings that my team has really grasped onto. And the first really is investing in your team and team strategy is really important. So it sets the foundation. So coming together, getting to know one another, building the rapport, understanding personally and professionally more about your team is important, and working collectively to establish the vision, to establish the mission, to establish how you want to operate is truly, if you skip that step, it's not a good step to skip, in my opinion. It was truly instrumental and valuable for our team as we grew together and partnered closer together. Number 2, prioritize where you start. So what we learned earlier on is that there's a balance between building business architecture versus using it. And so starting out earlier on, as we were learning, there's a lot that you're learning and a lot that you're coming up to speed on. But where I believe the majority of the time is really around using it. That requires a balance when you do have a small team. And number 3, deliver the value that really matters to your organization. For us starting out, it was really establishing those single points of accountability. And as we've continued to mature, our stakeholders, I mentioned, wanting to know more about assessing the capability. And then starting now to really integrate into capability-based planning. And building partnerships is really important. So as I mentioned, we sit within the business, but we have really strong relationships with our enterprise architecture partners. In fact, anytime we meet with them, it's a joyous occasion. We always start out with questions on what we call, how are the humans? It's just a personal catch up, getting to know, how's life outside of work? And then we talk about work most of the time. But having that time and those relationships, it's just invaluable. It's just the most important thing for us. So having those partnerships in our technology space has been really crucial. And then the last but not least, being a humble, courageous leader. So honoring and respecting your legacy. I do believe that our role is to lead and catalyze change with empathy. And the one most important thing that I've learned is that you must maintain the courage of your convictions in order to persevere through the business as usual headwinds that you will inevitably encounter. And I will end with one quote that my team and I currently go to quite a bit when we start to encounter those headwinds. And that is a famous quote by Nelson Mandela that says, "It always seems impossible until it's done." With that, I will thank you for listening, and I will happily take questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Tanisha, for that great presentation. So we have a few questions in the queue, and I'll start out with a question from Lucy. And her question is, at what level of capability are your single points of accountability typically established?
That's a great question. So we established executive sponsor, we establish at the level 1. And capability owners are established at the level 2. And so when I say that was a bit of a question that we had to go back and forth on. So the executive sponsor is typically seated over that level 1, but we recognize in some of our business units, we did have to go down to the level 2, depending on the makeup of the business unit organization.
Excellent. So actually, we have another question from Lucy. So
Okay.
the question is, how did you navigate agreeing single points of accountability? What if each department likes doing things their own way and believes their own approach warrants a special approach?
That's a great question. You know, anytime I think you say or use the word accountability, um, I think just as a human, you sort of are going to run out the room. Like I'm not it, right?
Mm.
And so there was a little bit of resistance in the beginning, but I will say that the importance of having sponsorship at the top of the house really helped us in this space, because the mandate was, this is what we must do really to grow and enable as an organization. We're scaling and growing so fast. We need to understand who we point to for that accountability. So I will say that, you know, although we did have a little bit of resistance in the beginning, one of the things that really helped us get over that hump was our sponsor really sending out communication and really advocating for this work, and really not just advocating, but talking about the why. Why is it important to do this from a business point perspective as we're continuing to scale and grow across our organization?
Okay, excellent, excellent. We don't have any additional questions, but there's one question I would ask.
Sure.
You mentioned that you have a good relationship with your enterprise architecture partners.
Yes.
Was that always the case from the beginning, or was there deliberate things that you did to foster that partnership?
That's a great question, Alan. So yes, it was that way from the beginning. And so what I'll say with that, as our team formed in 2019, one of the ways we pitched the formation of business architecture was in partnership with enterprise architecture around it. And they are huge advocates for the value that this brings to our business side. And so the passion that they know that we have in driving this was really crucial. And so they've been on the journey with us and on board from the very beginning. And so I've been really blessed to have that strong partnership in our enterprise architecture space.
Okay. How often do you guys get together in that combined meeting that you have? Is there a formal plan around how often you get together?
Yes, so we meet with our enterprise architecture partners biweekly, and I also have monthly touch bases with the head of our enterprise architecture practice at T. Rowe.